terms of making the investments that need to be made to modernize the infrastructure. We are living with infrastructure that in many cases is 60 years old, and I won't go through some of the publicized, I mean, we're talking about now some simple infrastructure problems, like you don't like to have roofs falling in sensitive areas. These are tremendous safety issues. And so I'll give you one success story, and that was in our Kansas City plant. The Kansas City plant makes the non-nuclear components for nuclear weapons, and we recently rebuilt it, half the physical footprint, saved money, funded it through a novel scheme in which we did not put up the capital up front, but we'll pay it over time. And that's one plant that now is prepared for, I would say, the modern era with a reduced stockpile. But we have a long way to go with our other facilities to do that, so it's a big issue. The last point I'll make there, Jane, is a little bit different, but I want to emphasize it, is in fact in October we had a 20th anniversary celebration of President Clinton's commitment to maintaining the stockpile without nuclear testing. So we haven't tested since 1992. In 1999, I'll just make the observation that there was a rather unpleasant set of hearings on the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. I would just observe that at that time, the science-based non-testing program had not been established. The international network of underground detection stations had not been deployed. Maybe we need to wake up and recognize that the two major objections at that time have been resolved through technology. Personally, I think that we need to kind of start re-engaging that conversation in terms of the future of the stockpile.
So, see, you can't be mad at me. I've just let you make an important point to those on the Hill who would criticize you.
Right.
You're welcome. We'll now invite your questions. Please state your name.
That's one thank you for 3 questions.
And ask,
right.
And ask a question that is much friendlier than mine were. The ambassador of Iraq. Here he is.
Good morning. First of all, let me congratulate you for achieving this for the United States and also for the international community. We hope in Iraq that it will reduce attention, at least politically, in that region. The question I have is, could this be a prototype or a case study for further collaboration on important issues outside the Iranian issue? I'm talking about North Korea or others. Or are there enough lessons learned from this? As a scenario, you talked about a scenario, and this is an actual scenario which happens. The second question is, was this, for you personally, a political project or a technical project?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, look, on the first question, first of all, there remains hope, but you know better than I that the P5+1 unity in resolving a very difficult problem will eventually spill over and pay dividends to other discussions in the region, and perhaps in other parts of the world, but including in the region. We'll see. Again, you know more about that than I. I would say from again, and I'll make this more of a personal point of view because, again, lots of the issues, you're going back to the questions that Jane tastelessly raised earlier, are really Department of State and National Security Council issues. But I do think that there is room, frankly, for injecting more of this kind of transactional, scientifically grounded discussion at high levels of these negotiations. Because frankly, well, I think what we found was that, we were able to make progress at that level, and that could then kind of unlock additional broader discussions that I would say are more in the political realm. Now, for us, there was no separation of technical and political. Again, Secretary Kerry was clearly, the lead negotiator in the foreign ministry channel. But the fact is, we, as did Zarif and Salehi, just worked seamlessly together, and that was absolutely critical to success. So maybe there's more of that possible in some of these other challenging problems.
Well, but I would add to that inserting Moniz and maybe Salehi, I mean, you both went to MIT, but you didn't know each other. Is that what the story was there? But
Correct.
Inserting
Correct.
Scientists into a
Right.
political process
Right.
of this kind
Yes.
made getting to the end state possible.
Not to mention that Kerry and I are both from Boston.
All right, now,
Right.
in the back, right there, in the red tie. Right here, right there.
Oh,
Thank you very much. I'm Benjamin Tour, retired Foreign Service officer. Mr. Moniz, the nuclear deal obviously had an impact on interest in the region in nuclear programs. And I'm specifically thinking about potential cooperation in civilian nuclear programs, which various countries are very interested in, including Israel, which has actually nuclear weapons. Do you see a potential for working in the civilian nuclear program area and how that might eventually contribute to a nuclear weapons free Middle East zone? Thank you.
well, we are certainly interested in our collaborating in nuclear power. For example, the UAE would be a good example where they are building nuclear power plants right now. They are not viewed as American power plants, but I want to point out that Westinghouse actually has major engagement in the supply chain for those reactors, and that's of course all based around a so-called 1-2-3 agreement, peaceful uses agreement with the UAE. We have such agreements in place or in negotiation for renewal with others in the region. Saudi Arabia is an example. Egypt is another. I think the discussion with Israel is ongoing.
Okay. We have time for about 4 more questions. Henri Barkey, Director of our Middle East Program.
Hi, I'm Henri Barkey from the Middle East Program. You said something very interesting about the participation of Russia. First among equals, and you actually praised their collaboration. So can you...
Just to clarify, first among equals on the issue of removing uranium from Iran. I mean,
Okay.
I don't mean the whole. I mean more broadly.
So can you please explain to us why you think the Russians were so accommodating and so forward leaning on this issue when they are so difficult on others? I mean, what was it about the Iran deal that was of interest and importance to them, other than non-proliferation?
Well, first of all, I don't want to dismiss the issue of the non-proliferation driver, but Russia has a specific engagement with Iran in terms of a commercial nuclear power plant, the Bushehr nuclear reactor, for which they supply fresh fuel. So from that point of view, Russia would be the most logical place for the low-enriched uranium to go, because they, in turn, anyway are supplying fuel for Bushehr. You remember I noted the 3.67 is the lowest assay fuel in Bushehr. So they have a very, very direct reason there. But what I would say is I think they went above and beyond in the sense that they also took some, I mentioned some scrap without going into detail. They are storing some 20% fuel that will ultimately be part of Iran's research reactor fueling. I don't mean the Arak reactor. I mean a smaller reactor. So Russia, I think Russia was logical to take the bulk of the material, but they even went beyond that in terms of additional material.
And they had offered, had they not, before this deal was negotiated, to take the spent fuel from the civil nuclear reactor?
And Bushehr, they take back the spent fuel. Correct. That's a good point, Jane. Yeah. The fuel they supplied, they take back.
All right, we will have a lightning round, 3 questions. Please just ask a simple question. I can see the 3 of you. 2 are in this 3rd row, and the 3rd is on the side. You, sir.
Tom Cochran
Take
retired.
them together.
Tom Cochran retired from NRDC. This is not a criticism of the deal, and I congratulate you on it, but I'd like to clarify the distinction between timely warning measured in terms of acquiring a significant quantity and timely warning in terms of acquiring the amount of HEU needed for a nuclear explosion. Which was it that the president had in mind? And
Good question. Thank you.
Dan Raviv of CBS News. Did you sense from the Iranian side a sincere suspicion that the U.S. might not live up to the deal? And of course, there'd be some political evidence of that, as some in Washington say they'd renegotiate or tear it up next year.
And you, sir. Yeah.
Milton Honig. The November 18th quarterly report of the IAEA to the Board of Governors has a statement which has been repeated for a number of years, in which the IAEA says it is not in a position to provide credible assurance about the absence of undeclared nuclear material and activities in Iran. Now, from what you're saying, do you expect in the next quarterly report, which I think is coming very soon, this statement will no longer appear because Iran is in provisional compliance with the additional protocol? Or perhaps we'll have to wait 8 years until what they call the transition date, when Iran actually ratifies the additional protocol. What can we expect?
Thank you. Okay.
Well, okay, just touching a little bit on each question. Tom, yeah, it's, I don't know what difference you were talking about there, but let me just say, nevertheless, that it's well known the president's requirement was that for at least 10 years there be a minimum of 1 year to acquire a significant quantity. You can scale as you want, and I did emphasize minimum of 1 year. In terms of the U.S. trust, a lot of mistrust expressed, and I think you mentioned the congressional background music as part of it, but I think in my view, the real issue is the very complex set of questions around the sanctions relief and the extent to which that would go back into the other question, that would in fact open up the opportunities for getting foreign investment and doing business. Because again, certainly the United States, I think we have every intention of, and have done, everything we said we would do. It doesn't change the fact that in the real world, with continuing sanctions going on in different ways, for example, we did additional sanctions on the missile tests.
Right.
Well, then some will say, well, how do I know that's not just really a backdoor for kind of undoing the sanctions? Well, they're on different entities is the answer to that particular question. So anyway, so I think that's really where the issue lies. To what extent will the business relationships be untangled sufficiently to draw attention? On the question of, well, just general verification and additional protocol, et cetera, there is the agreement is very clear. Let me make it very clear. Iran, from now on, adheres to the additional protocol. And in terms of effectiveness, I'll emphasize what, for example, Jim Clapper, Director of National Intelligence, has said. He has said, look, we're never going to say, we have 100% certainty in detecting something. But the bar is raised extremely high. The risk levels are high. The additional insight we get is considerable. And so we think this is a very, very effective verification regime.
Well, let me say two things. First, Ambassador Wendy Sherman, whom many of you know, who has been to the Wilson Center to speak only once. She doesn't
Fabulous.
get
She's
the Moniz
fabulous.
Prize. Will be here on February 9th at 4 p.m. to talk about what it was like inside the room as a principal negotiator of this deal. She'll address the political side. She's not the nuclear scientist.
She was the political director.
But
No,
let me
that's not a joke. That's what she was. Right.
But let me also say that, to repeat what I said before, I think all of us have much more confidence that this was the right deal at the right time because Secretary Moniz was part of the negotiation, was a principal negotiator. And I think we all have more confidence that we will know if Iran cheats because he's still the Secretary of Energy. So please join me in thanking Secretary Ernie Moniz.
So what happens January 21st next year? Right.
I don't know.